Personally, I don't like watching true crime dramas. I like to watch fake crime dramas. So recently, I've started to watch the Sopranos series, which I could never do previously. It's a very good gauge if you're able to watch a thing and be able to remain somewhat detached from it. Because a lot of the stuff, a lot of the stuff in these shows is, can be triggering to someone who's experienced a tremendous amount of abuse. And the true crime stuff is just like, no. I think it's useful for people who haven't experienced, say, sexual assault by some kind of family member or religious figure or teacher or something or counselor, because it helps them kind of understand that, wow, this really did happen. Wow, this is a court report. Wow, this was proven. Wow, blah, 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 right? But if this has already happened to you, sometimes the task becomes accepting that, yes, this happened to you. You can't blame yourself for the pain to go away, and you can't deny that what happened was wrong, that you were completely bamboozled, you were completely powerless, and left to deal with this on your own. And worst of all, it's not unusual for the first couple of people, 1, 2, 3 people, for someone to disclose what happened to them. Say they were raped by a trusted person, who used their privilege and authority to manipulate them, to groom them, to brainwash them, to feeling it was their idea that, oh yeah, this is a consensual thing. You and me, what we have is real in this fake counseling relationship, when it's not. And sometimes it takes a very long time for that person to receive the education and the kind of enlightened witnessing of someone who has it together themselves, to be like, I'm so sorry. That person was so out of order and they hurt you so badly. That's abysmal. I'm so, so sorry. Because in certain communities, sexual violence in particular can become highly normalized. The only way to really make a dent in the prevalence of these patterns and the extent of this toxicity is to work collaboratively with law enforcement and to have a female or non-binary or trans member of the team, whether a counselor, justice worker, parent coach, whatever the heck, bear witness, like sit in every fifth session with the counselor. And 9 times out of 10, nothing happens, because 9 times out of 10, a qualified male counselor won't betray the trust. And in high stress, very, let's say, serious subdisciplines of therapy, like family violence, you have a higher likelihood of it happening. And so you need rigorous supervision, you need rigorous checks and balances, and you need rigorous witnessing. So just like when a woman gets a pap smear or a breast exam at the doctor's office, there's usually a female nurse hanging out in the room if a male doctor's doing it. This is the same thing. There's precedence for this. And I'm not a big fan of women babysitting fully grown men not to do criminal acts. But men aren't willing to give up their power as wholeheartedly as they need to in order for us to trust them more and have the rate of these kinds of trust violations decrease to the point of safety. So a very common response that someone has when I'm beginning an intensive trauma treatment with them to reduce the intensity of distress in association with some of this big T trauma or complex trauma would be extreme self-doubt, self-belittlement, a fundamental belief that I am not trustworthy. And where do you think they get that from? There are a few reasons why this happens. The first is, again, the negative attribution of responsibility. The responsibility when someone is sexually assaulted falls on the victim. It falls on the victim again and again, whether we're following a more conventional North American justice system model, or we're following kind of community response to sexual abuse. If the abuser has some kind of resource that the community finds essential, they will disbelieve the claimant. They want to believe that the world is good. They want to believe that these things just don't happen, that she must have seduced him, or she must be lying. And that becomes internalized over time. She may be advised to keep this a secret from the first couple of people that she tells, because again, they don't want this man to stop coming and delivering other forms of therapy to other people that he might not rape. But I keep calling it rape because it is akin to having sex with a child. The level of impairment that someone with big T trauma has, this is prior to the sexual assault by the counselor. If someone has big T trauma, if someone is growing up in deprivation, they're starving every other night as a kid, their parents are offline, they're struggling with addiction within the household, they're subjected to child abuse, whether physical, emotional, or via neglect. They're being kept away from school and other healthy outlets for socialization and education. And then they turn to substance use to try and regulate themselves. They are functioning developmentally at a lower level than an adult male professional counselor who comes into this community and who isn't contending with those issues himself and is charged and is being paid very well to meet with people one-on-one in confidential rooms. That's what rapists do. They take advantage of people who have lower education than themselves, who have lower capacity to defend themselves against their attentions, and they abuse them. Some people do it for entertainment. Other rapists do it because they think that they're owed it. Other rapists do it because they're pissed off without getting as much sex as their friends, and they want more experience to brag to their friends about it. But all cruelty is really motivated by ignorance and stupidity. But we can't feel a lot of empathy and compassion for these guys because 95% of the time they are quite remorseless. Unless they are charged, unless they have to pay fines, unless they have to do some jail time, they will never seek help independently. Which is why I'm a huge fan of mandated programs and counselors working collaboratively with law enforcement, with court mandation, with probation officers, and with victims advocacy groups, as well as restorative justice organizations. It has to be a fully integrated model. We have to be integrated with wraparound services as well. So, we've talked about some heavier stuff today, and I want to make sure that everybody knows who's listening to this. If you have any interest, if you're a counselor yourself, and say you're 3 years post-master's graduation, and if you would like to focus more on cultivating your skill set, working with survivors of complex sexual abuse trauma, you can contact me. I provide supervision services and extensive training in this area. We always need more. And I also offer support around case management, around private practice development, and continuing education, professional mentorship. If you are someone who has survived something like this, it is incredibly difficult to come to terms with. And you might be convincing yourself again and again that it wasn't that bad, that it didn't really happen like this, and that somebody would have stepped in if it was really as bad as you might have thought or felt it was. However, we can only deny the truth for so long before it pops out and it demands for us to heal from it. If you have not been, let's say, inundating yourself with a whole bunch I see all these fake tests on Pinterest of all places, social media, Instagram as well. There's so much garbage out there. These fake tests. Have I been sexually abused? Well, and don't remember, take this weird Rorschach test bullshit ink blot crap and we'll find out. No, don't take that as anything, please. But, if you are existing and trying to live your life, and if you're having a very hard time standing up for yourself, speaking up when someone is diminishing, belittling, or abusive towards you, if you can't stand looking in the mirror, or if you have really disturbing dreams and nightmares, these could be indicators that, okay, that thing that maybe you thought was kind of wrong that happened to you way back in the day, maybe you should look at it a little bit. But there's no rush, and it really has to be done at your pace because we don't want to re-traumatize anybody. And if you try and rush into something too hard and fast, like some people, they just take the A-type personality approach to treating their trauma, which is, I want all the therapy at once. And they get into all kinds of stuff. I know I was tempted. I called around to a whole bunch of hypnotherapists, and thankfully they all responded very well to me. And they all said the same thing. It's like, if you think that you have been sexually abused, I don't think going to me would be beneficial because I don't recover repressed memories. What you might find more helpful is something like EMDR. And this is before I certified in EMDR. This is when I was a very baby therapist. And I'm like, okay. And then it took me one marriage and one midway through my common law spouse relationship to finally have the courage to, and the the data to back me up against this cacophony, this chorus of gaslighting and naysaying. And that's part of being a mature human being, is understanding and coming up towards and holding safe the survivorship of someone that experienced that. Not think less of them, not feel pity towards them. Instead, come alongside them as a friend, as someone who you want to see win. And to not care about what anybody else wants but that survivor. So some people are just born lucky. They're born into families that can do that have that experience doing that. Others, not so much. So a big part of my reason for living for a long time was to fill the role of the stand-in family member that would come alongside, that would be in the courthouse, that would assist somebody with, say, their couples or marriage counseling if their sexual abuse trauma was getting in the way of that healthy relationship. I was the one. And I think it's a very privileged position. And I think that the more people are willing to train in this subspecialty, the stronger our communities will be, and the more educated families and other community members will become, and the less guilty and the less isolated and the less prone to re-victimization survivors will be as well. So have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for listening. This is Amora Sun signing off from Saturday Night Shrinking. Stay well.
The day that you arrived, the sun went black. An artificial night. You came and stole away the light and put it